Welcome to another episode of CS Presents. We are running this series of weekly webinars, inspiration from creative professionals around the world. I just want to, before we get started, please, if you have questions, use the Q&A button down here, because it's easier to keep track of questions. It looks really similar to the chat button, but when you put stuff in the chat, it's harder to track it. But feel free to chat with us, and when we get to the Q&A at the end, we might even be able to figure out how to let people talk if you raise your hand. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks everyone for joining. This episode is about the SmallHD 4K monitor series that we just announced and are beginning to ship this week. It's a project that we've been working on for over 2 years now, and a lot of engineering and design hours have gone into it, and we're really excited to share what we've been working on with everyone. So I have a little presentation that I'm going to go through, and then hopefully quickly we can get into some conversations with everyone who's here. Just make sure we have enough participants, and then we should wait a little bit. What do you guys think?
We might want to wait a couple more minutes, but we can introduce ourselves while we wait.
That's Dave Bredbury. He's the product manager working on, well, I guess the cinema products coming out of Creative Solutions. Maybe I should introduce Creative Solutions for a second. Creative Solutions, a small group of designers and creatives and engineers that make kind of their life around building tools for content creation, in particular, filmmaking, production. And the brands that we release products under are SmallHD, Teradek, and Wooden Camera. And my job is to look after the products for the cinema market and production around the world, gear for production. Dave Bredbury comes from SmallHD side. He's working out of our North Carolina Raleigh office, and he's the product manager for working with me on cinema products. And then the unsung hero of all the SmallHD monitors that have ever come out, but in particular the PageOS that everyone is familiar with over the last 5 years is Barrett Phillips. He's our UX architect for all the monitor software, and he's also a cinematographer, and colorist, so he's kind of applies all of his knowledge about that stuff to hopefully make software and user experience that people like. Forget anything, Dave?
No, I think you covered it. It's good to be here.
Thank you, Greg.
I think we could also call you a color scientist.
I'm just pushing it.
Color dilettante. Thanks for chiming in here in the chat. I see Phil Holland and Lou Rothenberg, as well as Jim McKinney. So hi, everyone. Feel free to chat in the chat or directly to us. But give it another, I'm going to get started, I think. So try to share my screen here. Cool. So welcome to our little talk about our new monitors. So we've been, like I said, we've been working on this project for 2 years, over 2 years. designing a new architecture around 12G SDI and 4K video, as well as a bunch of new panel technologies to deploy together with an entirely new software operating system and a new mechanical design system for housing all of this awesome stuff. And the reason for that is that we believe that 4K and HDR is not just the future, but it's something that we should be looking at on set now. I mean, we've been watching it at home on 4K monitors for years, grading it in 4K and HDR and color correction for years, capturing 4K video for over a decade on set, but not monitoring in 4K resolution or in 4K HDR. So we think that this is a 4K world. Every year, a camera with a larger sensor becomes more popular, and depths of field become more shallow, and television sets at home get better, and delivery technologies get more capable. And so the last place that you want to be looking at an old 90s technology is when you're capturing these images on set. So we think, we've spent a lot of energy towards that, and I think it's going to be really cool when people get their eyes on it. Not to be obvious, but why does 4K and HDR matter on set? Resolution. You're filming subjects and products, environments that have high frequency detail. You will miss things. You might see something that you thought was in focus on your HD monitor, and when you get to post, the shot that was on the edge is actually out of focus. Why does HDR matter? Because there's more saturated colors. The noise floor becomes more visible. In darker areas, you have way more dynamic range in dark areas, and highlights are now actually details. And so you should start monitoring at the brightest dynamic range and the widest color gamut when you're shooting, and you can always make the creative decision later to pull those details back, those colors back, the brightnesses back when you're grading. But you want to be able to see, what's outside the window. In standard dynamic range, highlights used to just go to white and 100 nits white. We call it blown out, but now there's a lot more dynamic range in our highlight areas, far, far more. And we don't want to ruin one of the greatest scenes ever photographed in movie history. So there's so much, to save you by monitoring in HDR and in 4K, but also there's the creative capabilities of seeing such a more rich color and brightness of color and saturation. It's not just about highlights. So that's my little spiel about 4K and HDR. We can get into it later in the Q&A, but just to introduce the SmallHD 4K monitors, I talked about 4 main kind of pillars that these monitors are built on. It's not just a panel. We think of these monitors as kind of 4 main components, and I made an incredibly cheesy slide to kind of convey what that means. This is our table. This table is representing, if you can imagine, what these monitors are. It's not just the panel. The panel is the most important thing because that is what we're looking at, and that, of course, has to have the right qualities for your set. But it's 3 other incredibly important elements. We have our new PageOS 4 operating system, which has been completely revamped. We have a intelligent, incredibly sleek and lightweight but rugged unibody aluminum chassis, and we have the small 4K video processing architecture, the electronics that drive the whole system. And I think it's kind of unmatched in anywhere within tens of thousands of dollars, a monitor that has this amount of video processing power in it. So I'll talk a little bit about that next. So the Unibody chassis, as you can see on the slide, it's, we make monitors that can be used in the field, in the bush, on top of a mountain. They're designed to be rugged, but they're also designed really to be something that you would be proud of in your grading suite, because it looks great too, aesthetically. And the chassis is equipped with a ton of great features for use on set. It has these cheese plates all around it that are actually removable and replaceable with different threaded holes and features. It has a dovetail on the back that you can add accessories on, like battery plates and cheese plates, and they power them independently of the AC power supply input. So you can hot swap batteries on the battery plate. You can hot swap the entire battery plate while the AC adapter is plugged in. There's also dual 12-volt LEMOs for accessory power. There's 2 USB connectors, and like on the front, come on, you guys see it?
It just says loading.
Oh, you want?
Must be a heck of a slide.
And I think what's cool about the monitors too is if you look at other 4K HDR solutions, they're so much wider, like 8 inches thick, something like that. We've been able to pack quite a bit of punch into a pretty narrow chassis, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, quite a bit thinner even than the previous production monitors, quite a bit lighter as well.
Yeah, I think the 17-inch version is as heavy as the 1303 HDR that we're currently selling. So, you get all those extra inches for no more weight.
Hold on, I'm reloading my awesome browser.
DuckDuckGo, is that what it's called?
That's a little company called Google.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Loading.
And while Greg works on that, you can actually look at one of the 4K monitors in action behind his shoulder there.
There we go. Okay, so really strange. Yeah, so just a little more detail on the front, underneath this SmallHD logo right here. There's a SD card, a microphone jack, and a
Headphone jack.
Really powerful USB headphone jack, and a USB for charging your iPhone. So I think we made that one a high amperage one, so you can charge your iPhone really quickly, which is an important feature of a grading monitor. Just a closer view on this back plate here. We've also got a GPI port as required, and Ethernet port for networking connections to this monitor. We're working with some companies that you're really familiar with to integrate some remote capabilities, integrations for color stuff in these monitors. I don't really want to announce anything yet, but I think you can probably imagine what it is. And then, of course, the video processing of the small 4K. We call it small 4K. So we've got 4 12G SDI inputs and loop outs, as well as a 4K HDMI in and out, which allows for totally versatile use of this monitor with the ability to match the outputs to a single input and doing multiplex views on the screen. So you can put 2 12G SDI inputs, monitor them with side by side. You can have a 4-up with 2 12G inputs and scopes below them. You can have different LUTs for different color gamuts. and on the same input. So it has a lot of incredible features with that multiplexing capability. And you can also pass some of that downstream, so you can use it as a quad split generator. There's tons of configuration in our menu system. We can talk a little bit about the OS4 software, but this is one of those things that you really got to get your hands on to see how useful it is. But just quickly looking at this page, you can see that a ton of thought went into the flow of the user's navigation through these menus, and how much thought we put in, and effort Barrett and the team put into implementing these tools. And talked about PageOS 4. Barrett, I was gonna I think when we get to the Q&A, we can talk a little bit more about the new features in PageOS 4, but just a word about how we think about our monitors. I think maybe all other monitors that you use on set, on productions, have a menu, and the menu lets you navigate it, but we kind of designed the philosophy around our operating system that it actually feels like a user experience. It feels like a device, operating system that has, instead of just a menu with tools on it, the tools really were designed to feel more like apps, and you can design pages, custom pages. It has now all kinds of customization for repeatable page creation, and even kind of custom designed quick generic pages that you can create if you need to start a quick focus page or a quick false color page. It's also super fast responsive as you navigate through the different pages and menus. But then in addition to that, and I showed a little bit of it in the video processing config menu, but one of the things probably the thing we're most excited about, and the thing that Barrett put the most energy into the design of, is the color pipe, which is a kind of video input setup wizard for inputting log video and monitoring it, and understanding the settings that you enable to monitor, and understanding the actual accurate display setting that you're watching a log or 709 or 2020 video input into your monitors. So as you go through the wizard, you have a ton of settings that it walks you through and makes you configure, so that you are absolutely certain that you put the right settings in and the right destination display settings that for monitoring the video inputs. There's also a similarly kind of intuitively designed calibration wizard, so that you are very aware of which color space and white point and EOTF that you're calibrating your monitor to, so that LUT is stored and your whole color pipe is something that is accurate and not going to be completely wrong when you look at it in post. And that's the three legs that are found in all of these monitors. So we have the small 4K video processing with 4 12G SDIs and all the multiplexing and video routing capabilities. We have PageOS 4, which is the totally redesigned and updated operating system software and color management software. We have the new Unibody chassis, rugged and beautiful. One other thing about the chassis is we added a quick click wheel as well as the joystick that everyone's familiar with. So that was one of my favorite little things to navigate really quickly through menus. But of course, the thing that will separate all of our new monitors in capability and of course price is the display. So just a quick overview of what the different display technologies that we have here. Of course, LCD screens use a edge-lit backlight, which illuminates a whole area behind an LCD array. That area pushes light through uniformly through an LCD screen. So it's great for color and great for brightness because you can crank a lot of light through an LCD screen, which is very useful for video villages, for focus pullers, someone that just wants to see a bright and beautiful color screen. But it does limit your ability to render high contrast images that have a dark area and a bright area in the same image, because as you dim this backlight, the highlights also dim. And as you increase the brightness of it, the LCD panel only has so much ability to prevent the light going through it. What's the next technology that people love for dark images and the rendition of beautiful contrast and perfect color? It's OLED. OLED has no backlight. Each individual pixel is rendered, illuminated, unique and independently from each other. So you can have perfect contrast between a dark pixel and a bright pixel. And that's why OLED up till now has kind of been the industry standard for standard dynamic range images. And for a fleeting moment, the standard for HDR on set, but in post-production, sorry. But even now, there's extremely limited availability of OLEDs, and for the most part, it's actually a kind of dead to our industry technology. And of course, this is full array local dimming. You may have heard about it. You may have seen it advertised in consumer electronics or in some new computer monitors that you might have heard about. But it is kind of the best way of using an LED backlight with an LCD panel to allow for very bright images, very bright, hot. One of the things hold on, let me go back to OLED. I forgot. OLED has great contrast and great dark rendition, but it does have a challenge in rendering very bright images. So when we look at full array local dimming, this has a ability to render really bright areas while also showing dark areas of a scene. How does it do this? It has a high density array of lights behind a diffusion array of material that diffuses that light as it pushes through. And then of course, an extremely high quality LCD array that renders beautiful color and contrast and resolution. And I'll talk a little bit about how we've implemented these technologies here. So the first monitor, which is what I've got right here, is the Cine 24. It's a rugged, high bright, and affordable 24-inch video village monitor. It's great for looking at high resolution images, beautiful color, P3 color gamut, over 1300 nits brightness. So, and of course, it features all of those other three pillars of the SmallHD 4K monitor platform with the 4 12G inputs, the multiplexing, PageOS 4, the Unibody chassis. It's rugged. You can also use it in an office environment when it needs to look cool too. The OLED 22, both of which these two monitors are now shipping. I think some of them are shipping this week and next week. We developed the OLED 22 because everyone loves OLED and because it's an absolutely stunning panel. Incredibly lightweight. It's under 9 pounds. So you can really get it into a lot of different situations. And I think our beta testers are saying that they love it because they can run and gun with it, but it has a slightly more compact size, so you can get it into closer to camera. And because DPs love the look of the OLED, they're getting a lot of good feedback, but also it's significantly brighter than any other of the SDR OLEDs on set that we've seen. It's 350 nits brightness. So that's around 3.5 times as bright as any OLED that we're using on set. And because of that, you can render incredibly saturated colors that give you that HDR punch. And when you look at it side by side with the old SDR OLEDs, you just can't help but see how much better it looks. with a incredibly low, infinitely dark black point, and nearly flawless flawless color accuracy. The calibration budget on this is essentially might as well be nothing. So it's really an incredible display, and really excited for people to take a look at it. And then for our Vision series, which is the monitors that incorporate the full array local dimming technology, these are our HDR onset monitors and affordable HDR grading monitors. So pretty affordable price point. It's really the only option for a true HDR monitor that's under $30,000. It has the ability to have a true 1000 nit HDR workflow with over 2100 zones of local dimming at 1000 nits. So it has incredibly nuanced contrast rendition and a DCI 4K resolution display that you can master a feature film on or accurately monitor on set in HDR. Up till now, there hasn't been a monitor that can render the contrast ratio and the nit brightness for HDR, and you get it in a rugged, field ready chassis, not something that weighs 80 pounds and is incredibly expensive and delicate. So we are super pumped about the Vision series, which is also paired with the Vision 17-inch. So a perfect Video Village complement to the 24. So if you have your DP station or DIT station with the HDR 24-inch, you can pair it with the Video Village monitor that's 17-inch, or if you're on the go, you're in a process trailer, you're in a camera car, whatever, you can get this 17-inch HDR monitor, which has 2400 zones, local dimming, backlight, color matched to the 24-inch. So it's a pretty cool pairing there. And again, this one is lightweight as well. There's no actual HDR monitors out there that have this form factor, ruggedness, and image quality. I think that's really it. I don't want to do too much more PowerPoint, so let's take it to some questions. But I just want to also salute everybody that is here, because you are the industry. You are the we've been struggling ourselves as a business over the last 6 months, but that's only because the people that are here, I think, have been struggling so hard. And I think our hats are off to you guys for hopefully making it through this horrible time. And the rumors that we're hearing is that work is coming back, and I hope that we can all start to eat again. And I think it's really something to be proud of that our industry has been able to hopefully stay strong through all this. So I'm going to kick it to some questions, unless Dave and Barrett wanted to add anything or correct anything that I screwed up.
No, I think
We covered it pretty well.
you covered the PowerPoint well. We have a bunch of questions, and I can read some off. The first one is from Phil Holland. And
One second, wait, sorry, before we start, I just want to make sure as we go through this to remind anybody that came late to use the Q&A button.
Other side.
Oh, it's mirrored.
Yeah.
Use the Q&A button, because that is easier for us to track questions if you can.
Yeah, there's a couple in the chat too. I think we'll have to read through that. But yeah, Phil was just asking about the power draw, wondering about the approximate run times of 250 watt-hour V-mount or gold mount batteries. I know the max power draw. I haven't done the math on how long they would last. It kind of changes per monitor. So for example, the OLED max power draws 60 watts. But the Vision, which is FALD, is a much hungrier monitor, is around 220 watts. So you'd have to do some math to.
The OLED is super power efficient, and you can run it off onboard batteries.
Yeah.
I guess 60 was the max, right? Because
Yes.
we did a 240 watt-hour battery, and the readout was saying it was going to last 10 hours. So
Yeah,
I'm sure it's just highly
case,
dependent on whatever is being sent through it.
Yep.
Like if you're watching a white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 10 hours, it might last less.
So Blair Thornton asked if we're going to discuss 7-inch 4K options for camera.
We don't currently have any options like that to discuss. There is stuff that we're working on, and the Bolt 4K system is a really important component of the 4K onset workflow, and there is some integrations with monitors coming out for Bolt 4K so that you could pair it with a larger 4K monitor workflow.
Well, that's a key distinction too, right? We have plenty of 7-inch monitors that accept 4K, right? But we don't have any with a 4K panel in them. So there's a bit of a difference there depending on what the question, what you're really asking for. 7-inch 4K panel would not be that noticeable to the human eye, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so in particular, like on set, everyone is using wireless. No one wants to introduce 12G cables back into filmmaking. If you're using a Bolt 4K and your camera is plugged into the input, you can actually loop out HD SDI into your onboard monitor and get, if you don't have an HD monitor out of your camera.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is about DSMC2 bolt systems. So maybe we can come back to that one at the end if we have some more time. Let's cover Brian's question. He said, will y'all make a 13-inch high bright 4K monitor, also 7-inch and 5-inch, as these are all sizes I use to pull focus on currently. I'm currently using a 503, 703, and 1303.
We're definitely looking at a 13-inch 4K monitor. We've had a ton of feedback from focus pullers. We understand that the 13-inch has kind of become the industry standard for focus puller stations. So you can probably assume that we'll make one. It's not being announced now. It's not in the near future, but stay tuned. It's definitely on our radar.
Yeah, it's not in the near future, but it's not in the far future probably either. So, all right. So can you share the manufacturer of the Vision panels? I don't think there's a problem with that, right, Greg? We can tell them.
We manufacture the panel, the array, and the panel. I don't know if I really want to talk about it. If you want to send it, we can send you an NDA or something.
Yeah, the LCD we buy, but the rest we make.
From Japan, and it's really good.
Yeah. Well, and that was Vision too, not OLED.
Yeah.
But they're both from Japan, actually.
Yeah.
All right, Wes, how does the local dimming model handle haloing or blooming he's referring to? I think Barrett can probably best speak to that question.
Yeah, I mean, just my kind of personal view on it. Sitting next to an OLED, it's really hard to tell. Excuse me, it's really hard to tell the difference between the two. To my eye, is the truth of it. I was very surprised by that. I was expecting quite a bit more of the haloing going on. It's very diminished. It's impressive. Yeah.
I've
but
seen
again, you have to see it for yourself.
Many examples, many little, photos of FALD panels. And we'll wait and see when we're completely done and shipping it. But to me, it's the best looking FALD I've ever seen. We had a DIT come in-house. To him, it was the best looking FALD he had ever seen in regards to this blooming and haloing. And just, so people understand who are watching what that means is there's sometimes can be on an FALD historically some white light blooming around small bright objects. So we won't go too deep into that. Anything to add, Greg?
Yeah, I would just say it's better than it's way better, almost like night and day compared to the Apple one. And from what we've seen of the Apple, of our, what we've seen is, I don't speak for Apple, or I love Apple.
Disclaimer.
Just a disclaimer.
But from what we've seen, it's definitely like a different world from that. So if you're expecting that kind of, I know there's been some pretty epic takedowns of that panel. It's nowhere near like that. It's something that is, you could really use this to grade HDR. If you want to, grade a Star Wars battle scene, you could even probably be okay with that. So, a bunch of stars on a black background. So looking forward to getting some feedback on it, because we've been spending, I think I forgot to talk about it in the presentation, but we have our own hardware architecture that drives that array, so that there's a relationship between all of these LEDs and the way that the diffusion spreads their brightness out as it goes through the LCD display, and the way that the LCDs, close and allow light through or prevent light from going through. There's all these algorithms running on our hardware that manages that imaging transmission of light. And we've spent like 2 years working on these systems, and I think you'll see and be impressed by it when you lay eyes on it. So
Agree.
Yeah, true dual modulation.
Yeah, it's awesome. Wes had another good question. How does the OLED handle areas in picture above 350 nit?
It's a good question. That's, I guess, when it's run in HDR mode, it'll hard clip right at 350 nits, just like you'd expect in an HDR curve. If it's showing Rec 709, you can obviously click it studio mode to go to 100 nits, or you can just sort of blast that all the way up to 350 as well.
Yeah.
There's obviously tons of great exposure tools to be able to indicate things that are more exposed.
Yeah. To speak on that, it's sort of in the pipeline right now. But when going through the calibration process, HDR calibration specifically, it will ask you to place the probe on the screen to grab its black point and white point, and then those will get placed onto the waveform and histogram, just so you can see exactly what your panel's showing you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt asked, we have some focus pullers asking for 9-inch. Also, any word on if a 4K 9-inch is coming? The 1303 is pretty heavy.
Don't tell Dave that.
I want a 9-inch really bad.
Dave, I think this is
I wrote that question. I'm Matt. No, not really. Yeah, I've wanted to do a 9-inch, and we're definitely thinking about it and looking into it and chasing that dream.
Everyone on this call that wants a 9-inch, send us an email, and then we'll
know it's not just me. Me and Matt.
One too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool set. 9 or 10, really. I'd be okay with a 10-inch as well. Next question. Hey guys, excited to sit in on this. Oh, it's still maybe Greg, you can answer this really quick. If not, we'll come back to it. He said,
go over the DSMC2 bolt. Well, we have a bolt that clicks on the back of a DSMC2 monitor, and then it will send video to a bolt receiver.
Okay. Next question. What qualifies as HDR? Is it a certain number of stops of DR?
Hey, Barrett.
There's a lot of different, yeah, there's several different specs on that. But I guess in our case, we're not claiming our OLED, for example, is like a full HDR monitor. There are HDR specs, like the VESA spec that I believe goes to maybe 400 or 350. But kind of in our monitor, you're just looking at, it gives you the range that you can see within that HDR space. Obviously on the vision panels, it's going to be greatly expanded. But you'll be able to see within that zone, displaying a PQ signal, it will be accurate in that zone. So it's sort of, there's this flexible kind of zone, I guess you can, HDR, once it hits a certain point, I guess, 1,000 nits, 0.005 nits as the black point is kind of generally accepted.
Yeah.
But I don't, oh wait, are you still are you still talking about the number of stops of dynamic range, or?
Yeah.
I'm talking about just HDR in general, just kind of what qualifies.
I mean, it's a wider color gamut and the ability to show more levels of brightness. So
yeah.
I'm sorry, I was typing to the other guy, but basically instead of thinking about watch everything that you shoot is going to be 100 nits as the brightest. Now you can actually capture images that will have an area in it that's black simultaneously as an area that's like 10,000 nits. So it's really thinking about exposure in terms of how much brightness is coming out of the eventual viewing medium. It's not like more stops of captured dynamic range. It's more about how much brightness can be shown on the image, and that's a really different thing than what we're all used to, because pretty much everything we've ever shot in Rec 709 has been kind of thought about as 100 nits as the brightest point. That's what I was talking about. The Godfather shot, you know, those white bars in The Godfather, they're just white. They're not bright, they're white. And in HDR, you can have those be incredibly bright, or incredibly bright and white, incredibly bright and white, or incredibly bright and fully rendered detail with a Starbucks cup sitting there. So like, what that means is that when colors are brighter, they have greater saturation and greater just punch. And that's kind of what HDR monitoring is.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of math and stuff that explains it all, which I don't know if that's really what they wanted to know.
But it is definitely the right way forward, and it's the right way to mitigate panels getting brighter. It's being able to push that detail back into the shadows where our eyes can perceive the contrast, what it's all about.
The next question, Barrett, you've touched on it a little bit. Can OLED render HDR images?
Yeah, I guess I kind of specifically spoke on that one. So yes, it can, it can display a range of it, like any monitor can display a
like an
range of it.
HDR preview, essentially.
Right. And I would actually recommend setting it to HDR, like as a, if you're picking between the two, because SDR is, Rec 709 should be a 100 nit target. HDR is the way forward and how to deal with the extra brightness and keeping, like I said, all the dark areas nice and true.
We've spoken to a fair amount of colorists, and what we hear is that generally speaking, most of the scene, most pixels in a scene are graded to no more really than 400 nits, 350 nits. Most things play
most of the time. Yeah.
It isn't, things that are beyond that are usually like a light bulb, tiny little light bulb hanging in the corner, or a slash of sunlight going, across. But if you get significantly brighter than that, it's too bright. And that's another reason why we think that watching in HDR is important. So you can see what your highlights are going to look, your highlights might just look like a white stripe, or it might look like a blindingly, insanely bright window that's incredibly distracting.
Yeah, it's like a wider paint palette. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to use all those, those paints or those brushes, but it just kind of lets you go into any of those zones a lot more freely.
Yeah.
So the light that you just blasted and clipped at 100%. Or 98% now has detail outside that window and is blazingly bright. So you could actually, light that window in your day interior at a much lower brightness and have it be part of the palette that you're lighting with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How is the Vision series in SDR?
It's awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
It's not going to negatively impact SDR.
It's even better, the black level. Because it's not driving at such a high brightness. It's even more OLED-esque because it doesn't have to account for a wider contrast between dark and
yeah. There are some really technical reasons why it can achieve a extra saturation boost because of its local dimming technology with the dual modulation, but it's really stunning to see it in person. I can't wait for people to see it, because when I saw red on it, just couldn't believe my eyes. It was so punchy.
Yeah, you're not making any concessions, basically, right? You get the best of both worlds. Next question from Luke is, can Vision convert HDR to SDR for non-HDR monitors?
This is
Basically,
one of our dreams, for sure.
Yes.
It's not currently in there, but it's for sure in the pipeline of software development.
Yeah, the color pipe, the specific pipeline it'll be going into, yeah.
So you'll be able to loop out of the monitor.
Do you want to show them the color pipe real quick, Barrett, or you want to not do that?
I mean,
kind of what Greg had in the slide was more or less like the,
Gotcha.
the check boxes. So
one thing to say is that in OS4, even in our SDR monitors, you can basically already do this. So
yeah,
there's
this update gets swept over to everybody. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so along with the 1303 4K, please add a 1703 4K for focus pulling. Now this we already have. So the Vision 17 is going to be 4K, and that is available for order now. It should be shipping October. We will also be most likely doing one similar to the Cine 24, which isn't full array local dimming and is just edge lit if you are on a budget.
Yeah, for people who don't need the
HDR,
HDR,
4K, and you're on a
if you're shooting if you don't have a sun hood and you're outdoors all the time and those kind of conditions, that'd be a good option for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the Vision 17, it's got like very bright display with the ability to render beautiful color, so that I know a lot of focus pullers, obviously you crank the contrast and you put a ton of peaking on, and you almost don't want the DP to be able to come over and look over your shoulder and steal your monitor, and often are banning the DPs from looking at your monitor. But we all know that the DPs want to look at the monitor. So what's cool about if you were to buy the Vision 17, you can just flick over to a clean, to your focus page, which has tons of peaking and contrast, or maybe it's even monochrome. Click one click of the scroll wheel and you're on your beautiful, frame lines page with perfect color and contrast. The DP can check the lighting before they run back to the DIT card.
Yeah, and so next question is from Phil. He's asking about rugged cases, lighter than ATA stuff, and asking if we're putting any effort into that. And the answer is yes, we are. Absolutely, we have a couple things in the works.
Can you answer us? Would you want a soft case or a Pelican style case, rather than a like a Flight Master case or something?
Yeah, if you can, Phil, type your answer into the chat instead of the Q&A. And we can come back to it in a second. All right, so Luke asked, how are the high number of dimming zones achieved in the Vision panel? How does this compare to OLED? Now, as far as achieved, you just have a vast array of LEDs behind it. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, I mean, we basically built a custom piece of hardware that has thousands of lights on it and thousands of capacitors and programmable microchips that are driving each one of these in a really nuanced way that each one can independently be configured by algorithms that are, understanding how their brightness relates to the other brightnesses around them, relating to the color and brightness of the scene and the capability of the LCD panel that's in front of them. LCD is basically like an iris, right? When it can prevent light from going through or allow light to go through. And that's how a red pixel is red or green pixel is green, but it can't block it out entirely. So that's why, OLED is better. You have a red pixel and it turns on or off. But combining the lights pushing through a diffuser, pushing through an LCD panel, and all those things being managed by an FPGA system that's continuously analyzing every pixel's brightness and color, is able to render images that are OLED-esque in terms of the ability to be dark, because you can turn off all of these lights, but still have these lights on, as opposed to an edgelit where it's just on, or it's either on or dimmer.
Yeah, and I think the key distinction, I guess, the dual modulation, keyword means that the panel, the LCD panel and the array of LEDs are actively working with one another to I guess create the best contrast, because there's lots of variables that can happen in there, which blooming is one of the artifacts that can come up when it's only a single modulation. Obviously, blooming can happen still, but it's the way that dual modulation is designed. It's essentially designed to mitigate that specifically, and it just does a really good job.
And the density of zones, so that there's just more nuance to how many zones are on or off or dimmed, in the way that you can create a gradient of brightnesses within the zones.
Yeah, and he did actually add a little more to his question. He said he asked this because it seems to be the highest amount of dimming zones he's ever seen on a monitor, which is very true. It's definitely a feat that pretty much no one has done before, putting this many zones behind a panel.
A lot of zones in there.
Yeah,
it is kind of a more the better sort of thing.
Yeah. Eric said, for each display, what is the color gamut and coverage of that gamut? As well, what supported HDR curves, HLG, PQ, etc.? And lastly, are the Vision monitors Dolby Vision certified yet?
So they all have P3 coverage.
100% P3 coverage. Yeah.
Beyond 100% P3.
Yeah, I think 115 or something.
We don't have a measurement of Rec 2020 because nothing really achieves that. So we just say P3, although it goes beyond the Vision and the OLED go way beyond P3 coverage. Even the Cine has P3 color gamut coverage, so well capable of rendering all those colors.
For the curves, yeah. PQ right now, HLG within a month, probably.
Yeah, they'll both be covered as a display.
Dolby certified. It's
Working
in the works. You say bring it on?
I said working on it.
Okay. Yeah, it's as soon as we have a unit take over to them, I'm sure we'll be good. So Nicholas asked, is there a VESA mount spec?
100 millimeter VESA.
Yeah. Yep. Elvis. Sorry, go ahead.
It's technically VESA mount to be like VESA. It has to be in the center of the monitor. So we're like VESA compatible, but it's the
since it's at the lower half, it's
better. So
yeah, we've done some pretty hardy torture tests though. It's rugged. It's not going anywhere. So okay, how different is OS 4 to OS 3, and will OS 4 come to the smaller on-camera monitors? I'm thinking consistency for monitors on set.
Yes.
Yes, it's coming to everything, and it's different. Maybe Barrett wants to talk about it a little, but there's some different additional features, and the look of it is a little bit more, up to date. It's updated to look a little bit more sleek design-wise, and this is another opportunity there. Barrett's got a monitor. He can kind of show you a few of the little things.
I'll show just a couple things. One of them was we have like page labels now. It's kind of like browser tabs, more or less. If I go and create a new page, you can see it creates a name down at the bottom. I can go and edit the name, and so I can set these to whatever I want depending on whichever task that's set up for. Also, we have on the right hand side page types that Dave was touching on earlier, that just kind of let you go in here and select a focusing page, and it just creates a couple preset tools already, so you don't have to fumble around adding tools. There's also, this is the settings dashboard, which is, you can enable this. I'll go into the full settings menu, and let's see.
Yeah, it's basically a quick menu.
It's like, exactly. It's a quick menu that just allows you to get to all the the meatiest kind of settings. Like, I mean, input's the most obvious one, but backlight and volume and things like that as well. Oops, my headphone came out.
Yeah, so
but yeah, you can also see just little minor things like on the HDMI, you can see it knows that I have a feed there, so there's a little green light on it. So little quality of life things like that. We've just tried to make sure as many little spots on the OS get love.
The preset buttons real quick.
Yeah. So we've had presets before, obviously, but you can have a lot. There's just a lot more options now, as well as you can see, like, I've got a backlight custom, so you can go in and set discrete values for each one of these. So I could set the backlight to be a specific value, so I can say 100, confirm, and now that my
that custom
function one is assigned to 100. So yeah, you can see just quite a few more options are available.
Yeah, so expanded capability, and it's coming to it's actually available, I believe, in beta for your monitors that you have at home now, and the final version will be out really soon. Mike Fitzer asked, any chance you'll put a smaller vision monitor out, like a 17, extremely small cruise and extremely rugged locations, plus lots of flights make 17 cumbersome?
We want to do this. The issues that the reality is that it will be pretty expensive too. It'll be still like the same price as a 17, because all the gear, all the hardware, and the panel itself are still pretty expensive when you add it all together. So if the desire is not related to having something for cheaper, then I think the answer is yes, we can do that. It's kind of, we have something that we're looking at for this. And we want to come out with it, but it ended up being kind of expensive to build, and we kind of pushed pause on it to see how people were liking these, and we want to do it for sure.
Yep. Nick asked the bit depth of the monitors.
You want to tell them, Dave?
Yeah. So the OLED 22 is 10-bit, and the Vision 24 is 10-bit. The Cine 24 is 8+2, and the Vision 17 is 8-bit. That is a little disappointing on the Vision 17, but the FALD will actually really help with bit depth on the 17. We've seen
it's essentially, it kind of adds its own bit depth. But again, you'll obviously want to see it to make sure.
I think when you see it, you'll be blown away, though. Bit depth doesn't matter as much as you may think once you look at these things. They're incredible.
So Vision series, okay. Vision series recommended over the OLED and Cine for HDR post-production. I mean, you can monitor an HDR in HDR on all of these monitors in terms of the transform display of them. They'll just, brightness levels over their max brightness will be clipped. So we've heard of demand for a really nice 4K SDR post-production monitor, and obviously many of the more boutique or additional suites or DITs that are doing color finishing on in their own little suite have the need that they can't, not everyone can afford a $40,000 monitor. So the OLED kind of gives you that the majority of the brightnesses that you finish in HDR, and then you could if you love the image quality, you love the contrast and the color, you could use scopes to manage the really bright stuff in your 1000 nit PQ outputs. But for true HDR color grading, the Vision series is what you're going to need to use. 1000 nits.
Yeah, I love this question from Elvis. He said, does OS 4 and the Vision panel have a way to set input and output color space for LUTs? Barrett, I wanted you to touch on this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's kind of more or less what this color pipe has been designed to do. It's kind of just hold your hand and take you through. It asks you what's your input, and then ask you what do you want your output to be. That's pretty much it.
And what's cool is you can assign that color pipe to a specific input. So you can have input 1 be this specific setup and input 2 be this other one. He went on further though, Barrett, and he said, is there a way to quickly go from SDR to HDR monitoring?
Yeah, actually, let me switch this back around. Yeah, so from right here, you can see these at the top are my inputs, and then what color pipe is assigned to each of those inputs. So right now I actually have PQ HDR assigned to HDMI, since I've already created these other little presets, which these are, you just create these presets right here below. I'll show you. You can just quickly switch that over, Rec 709, and now can easily switch back and forth.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can see right here, this is where I can configure my PQ HDR or any of the other color pipes. It's like, you know, gamut, you can set that back to P3 or whatever kind of setup you want.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think some of this is coming soon, but his next part of his question was, how does side-by-side comparison work? Can you do something like HDR versus SDR?
Yes, that is in the pipeline.
It's not there yet, but
not
it's
there yet. That's absolutely something. Yeah, that's been kind of a big aspect of what the value we've been wanting to bring to the monitors. So it's definitely on the radar.
You could even have A and B camera and HDR and A and B camera and SDR once we finish the development on that software.
Yeah, we're really excited about the multi-view.
Mm-hmm.
And and one other thing I think we forgot to mention is we're going to have a 4K waveform, which seems like not a big deal, but it really is. I think there's only like 1 or 2 other monitors that have a 4K waveform, and they're both extremely expensive. So you can monitor PQ, 4K PQ waveform on these.
Yeah, see every pixel.
How does the Vision compare to the Sony PVM X2400?
So we haven't been able to get one to truly compare it side by side or anything. I don't know that those are even out yet. From what my understanding of it, the X2400, I think it's an edge lit monitor. It's not a full array backlight. It's not an OLED. So I think it does have some challenges. It'll have a challenge to reach the same level of contrast rendition as the Vision. It just won't be able to get as dark and bright simultaneously across an HDR image.
Yeah, they're marketing something called dynamic contrast or something.
I don't want to speak for Sony. I think that from what I've read, I think, you know, you can like bracket the segment of brightness that you want to look at, and it basically will clip things that are out of that range, but within that range you can see it across the display. But basically what it's doing is it'll be dimming or brightening its backlight. I think, I don't know.
I think that sounds right from what I read too.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure that it looks pretty. What else is another thing is that Vision 24 is DCI 4K, so it's a true 4096 horizontal resolution. So you can, you know, use it as a mastering monitor. And I don't believe that the Sonys are all UHD. So that's one other difference that you'd see there.
Yeah, so basically to be determined, but we're pretty confident in our.
Yeah, I think, you know, Sony has great monitors, and but, you know, our goal was to try to make something that was really awesome in the same price point that, you know, people were seeing from Sony. So we think we've gotten pretty darn close, and we're pretty stoked on how these monitors are looking. So.
It looks like Wes actually followed on the same question, and I think we've answered. He was asking what dynamic contrast is on the Sony, and so Barrett and Greg kind of explained that to the best of our knowledge. Again, yeah. Sony would explain it better, I'm sure. Film Rider saying he wants affordable and high bright. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about with that Cine 17. You were the same one asking about the 17-inch 4K. So we have the Cine 24. That's a high bright edge lit 4K. And that one's $54.99. When we eventually do a 17, I imagine it will be slightly cheaper than that. So, you know, let us know if you think that's affordable. but I think that's, much more attainable if you're not needing the HDR and you're just on set, sub $5,500. But yeah, let us know your feedback on that film. Right.
To that point on the versatility, we were considering adding a mode. I don't know how good of an idea it is to think about these things on stream, but to have a essentially edge lit emulation mode that essentially just turns on all the backlights of the FALD, just for those kinds of outdoor conditions where you're not necessarily wanting to view HDR. You just need a really bright image. So you could kind of add a little bit of versatility to that.
Oh, this is a good question. Andy asks, you guys sound really high on the Vision 24. Is there a situation in where you think the OLED 22 is a superior choice? Or is it for when a DP just demands OLED?
That's keen.
The OLED is super lightweight. It's compact too. It's 21.6 inches. So it's just, it has, and for, when you're shooting on set without a DIT or if running and gunning, but you want a bigger, beautiful monitor, I think that has a lot of benefit. And it's also, because it's OLED, it does just have slightly better black, black rendition. I mean, it's just perfect.
Yeah, I would say like if your scenes are largely going to take place in darker environments, like the OLED could very well be the right option. Like we delivered one to a studio that was doing one of those sort of video wall kinds of things. The XR stuff that like in that situation, it's perfect for that because the back walls only get to a certain brightness. Your set's only going to get to a certain light level, and so in that space, like you can just see really far into the shadows in the OLED panel.
But I don't know. I just feel like we decided, it confuses the message slightly because it's not quite HDR, but it's incredibly beautiful image with really great off-axis viewing. It's superior to the current OLEDs that you see on set. We've measured it and we can share those measurements. You can measure it yourself, but it's definitely better than the OLEDs that have been seen in terms of off-axis viewing. And I'll just say it one more time that it is better off-axis than any OLED that you're using now. Off-axis, the viewing is better. So that's for people that are concerned about that. But that's one other thing that is superior about the OLED. It does have a slightly better off-axis, or it has a superior off-axis viewing angle. And yeah, some people just love OLED. So the OLED because we know people love OLED. So I think all of those things.
I mean, he sort of asks us to pick a favorite. When I look at the HDR Vision next to the OLED, I like the way the Vision looks better, but the OLED is lighter weight, lower power consumption. So there's definitely times where I'd want an OLED and not a Vision. It's just going to be heavier and suck more power. So it depends.
I agree completely with that.
Yeah.
But the Vision is beautiful. So yeah, I don't know if we help.
Sorry.
There's almost no color shift when viewed at an angle.
On the OLED, you mean?
Yeah, on the OLED.
Yeah. I mean,
same with FALD. I would say color shift is very minimal. It does have a slight drop in luminance,
brightness, yeah.
But the actual color of the panel is kind of remarkable.
So next question, are the 1303 and 1703 edge-lit LCD? Yes, they are. So edge-lit is the tried and true technology we've been shipping for years and years. So the Cine 24 is going to be that same technology. Same with the 17 Cine when we do create that product. Wes said, any chance SmallHD would consider a larger 4K reference model for color correction and mastering? How big?
What do you need?
Yeah, let us know how big. We are considering it, but size is a tricky one.
Yeah, we have we have the beauty of the table at the four legs is that we can use the hardware, the technology, and use different panels, different display technology with the software and electronics that we've got in these. So we are looking at some larger ones. I think we'll see what the response is to these and kind of go from there and see what we want to do with them. But we definitely are. Stay tuned because we're coming. You know, one thing to just say is like SmallHD really hasn't been focused on the reference kind of space, the grading monitor space. You know, we've never really claimed to be a you know, a color correction monitor, even though we have had some really beautiful monitors out there. It just has, our focus has been, you know, bright, colorful rendition of great images and rugged, you know, form factor with awesome user interfaces and tools and great support. But, you know, we've spent a lot of energy and time creating this new technology platform. And it's definitely aimed at that space of, you know, higher quality, really reference grade space. So we're definitely going to be all over the place in that space. So
yeah, we're going to be releasing quite a few firmware updates because we're pushing heavy in this direction. So we want to be adding new features as often as possible.
Yep. Andy Bader asked, will these monitors be able to load 3D LUTs for calibration using a probe and CalMan?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that all our monitors currently have that capability. These will also.
Yeah, but let's just be clear. I think, you know, people have had some issues with calibration stuff for SmallHD in the past. That's been addressed. So, you know, these monitors will be able to be color matched to each other. So you can have multiple monitors calibrated and looking the same, which of course is almost shouldn't be mentioned, but I just want to be clear that we have kind of revamped the calibration on these, and there's no need to be concerned or think about, you know, there definitely can be calibrated, you know, plug them in and calibrate them.
Yeah, Nicholas, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, Nicholas asked if we have any demos of these monitors available to be shipped. We will eventually. Right now, we are pretty much stocked out, but as soon as we do, we can start that sort of discussion over email. And I do think it is a kind of product that is best seen. You know, if you really want to be convinced of this product, you just got to look at it. So
yeah, so check with your local reseller shop. You know, we've got a lot of demo units out to all the like cine sales outfits. Wherever you are, there's probably one on its way to, you know, your favorite shop. So contact them. If you want to reach out to us, we'll put you in touch with someone that's close to you. If you're in LA or New York, we've definitely got demo units floating around there as well. So if you're in LA, you can hit me up or come by CSLA. We're going to have them here in Burbank. And we're going to have, you know, appointment by appointment viewing sessions. So just reach out and we can set that up.
And for now, that is specifically for the OLED 22 and the Cine 24, but Vision, hopefully late September, we'll have some demo units out there. So what hardware, if any, is needed to utilize the monitors with an iMac running FCPX, Premiere, and Resolve? Will you get 4K HDR from these programs with the monitor?
Sorry,
Barrett?
It may require, excuse me, like an output box for that to function. I'm not as familiar with the Final Cut workflow. I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, you would just need like a mini monitor or a Decklink card or a Kumo card or one of those, you know, external monitor.
Yeah, a little interface thing.
Interfaces. But yeah, you absolutely could use it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Wes said you may want to mention that the Vision panel has outstanding viewing angle as well. What's that?
Assuming it's a Panasonic panel.
That's an interesting assumption, Wes.
We did mention that it has an outstanding viewing angle, Wes.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. And we can neither confirm nor deny if it's a Panasonic panel.
But all that
goofy smiles should tell you.
It's from Japan.
Yeah, it's from Japan. All right, next question is, does this new model have the same build quality as the 1703 models, as it doesn't look as rugged as the 1703?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's really, I mean, I think it actually theoretically is ruggeder, because it's
Ruggeder.
I mean, it's a unibody piece of aluminum, one massive piece of aluminum that it's totally machined out of. So it's super rugged. It just doesn't.
Yeah, the parts that were strong about the old one have remained strong. Like it's gotten a lot lighter because we removed these like rapid rail things from the back that kind of had a lot of weight to them. So
Yeah, we just took a lot of the weight out and made it really. The goal was to make it really slim. So I think it's pretty cool. But it has this Arca Swiss dovetail on it that you can mount your battery plates on.
One thing you didn't mention with the battery plate was the fact that when you bring it down, it actually just has a power plug right on it, so you don't need any external cabling or anything. It's pretty elegant. Kind of.
What I may have just not been clear about it. Like it has this little secondary power input, so you can hot swap. You know, if you have an AC, if you have your DC in with a 3-pin XLR because 24-volt camera monitor, you can hot swap battery while it's plugged in, or you can even, because it's a dual battery plate, which I don't have right now because it's out on a demo with a bunch of famous camera guys.
I will say it looks like Greg does have a printed piece on the back there, right? Not a final. Is that final piece? I couldn't really tell.
It looked printed.
It looks printed, yeah. So the final one will be a little bit different texture. Greg alluded to a partner for color processing. When will we announce who that is?
I mean, we're talking to Patrick over in Munich, and we're really close to having it. Basically, I might even make it into the. I'm not going to say it because I'm being mysterious. There's no really good reason not to say it.
People are Googling Patrick in Munich right now.
I haven't really talked to him about it yet, that we're done or when we would announce it. So I don't want to, it's you know who I'm talking about. But it's going to be able to plug into a certain live grading software, and I have a lot that's in there. So
I don't know, Barrett or Greg, if you have one of our screen protectors that you can hold up nearby. But yeah, the screen protector is really cool. Luke was asking about it. There will be an anti-glare version, and there will be just a basic one that ships with it. The one that ships with it is really just for protection in transit. It's going to be fairly reflective. It's just a travel protector. It's an expensive investment, so you want to keep it safe.
I guess in contrast to the old ones, I guess there's a little snap rather than rotating the screws up top, which could sometimes become unscrewed. These ones here, you just push a little snap over to the side. That's like a part of the screen protector itself, and it's just a little bit more usable.
Yeah. Do you see a difference in color rendering between the narrow spectrum RGB OLED and the broad spectrum LED Vision?
I mean, we calibrate them to the same thing, so
calibrating them both to P3 color spaces, right? So
yeah. Yeah, they look pretty
they
bang
have different capabilities, but they're going to look the same if you calibrate them the same. I mean, out of the box, they definitely look different. Like when we get or we touch them. Wes did say most colors would prefer a 55-inch monitor. So good feedback.
Yeah, it's interesting how the color suite has changed so much. Like first 10 years of HD, it was the CRT, Sony OLEDs, or Sony CRTs, and then those all died. And then it was the plasmas. They got really big. They're like those 50-inch Panasonic plasmas. Those all died, and now it's back to a 31-inch kind of dual LCD or an OLED. So, we're looking at a 55-inch for sure, somewhere in that ballpark. But maybe you can tell us more about what you do and who you are, Mr. Wes. We like all your questions.
Wes has a lot of good questions.
I know. A lot of good ones, yeah.
Does he work for us?
No. Luke said, will you guys be talking about Teradek Bolt 4K? Happily. Yeah, I mean, so I guess, is there a question about it? We still have it. It's an awesome way to go 4K without all the wires, right? The big hurdle, there's a lot of hurdles in going 4K on set. And I think that having the Teradek Bolt 4K and now having the 4K monitors is really going to simplify the transition to a true 4K HDR workflow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people are really comfortable with their existing Teradek wireless systems. And obviously 4K requires 4K, but and our current, the old Teradek stuff doesn't do 4K, but it also is only 8-bit. So rendering out HDR images with only 8-bit video source is just not going to work. So the great thing about the Bolt 4K, it's based on a new chipset that is 10-year development from our Israeli chipset company or team that's part of Teradek now, called Amimon, and that chip is a 10-bit video as well as 4K resolution. So it's critical for HDR workflows and for sharper images on set. So and also the quality of the link has improved as well with that new technology.
Yeah, and we're further integrating everything into software as well, so there's less reliance on external devices as often as possible to get them synced up.
Yeah. All right, so Eric said he disagrees with the 55-inch comments. Most reference displays are 31-inch due to uniformity issues on larger displays. 55 is better for clients. If you can make a 55 with good uniformity, then that's very good. But we haven't seen any that live up to our X300 at this time in our suites.
It's a high bar.
Yeah, very true. That's great feedback. Thank you, Eric. Will you guys be talking? Oh yeah, okay. So Luke said more specifically on the Bolt 4K, will it have?
Sorry, can I just?
Yeah. Go
before
ahead.
we move on, that last one, Eric. Can't find where it was. But,
It's under.
I know that every color, I mean, like the big color suites, you've got your X310 or X300, you've got an old PVM OLED or something like it, and then you've got LG up next to it to see like best worst case scenario. One thing that we're looking at doing is making a big monitor like that, but that has all of the video processing stuff and software in it from the small 4K hardware electronics in these. That would be curious if that was something, may not be your mastering monitor, but it might be a better additional client monitor or an bigger mastering monitor just to see it in a more cinematic look, but with all of the image processing and video electronics of a pro monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Something to think about. Maybe you can answer if you have.
Yeah, while we wait for him, Luke asked some more questions about Bolt 4K. He said more specifically, will Bolt 4K have independent outputs, the receiver that is? To clarify, can you assign different color spaces to the outputs on Bolt 4K?
So currently it doesn't have color space. I mean, like if you send log, it sends log. It just sends whatever. It's just like a video cable, right? It outputs whatever you put into it. It does have a pretty beefy FPGA in there that you can load LUTs into. So we don't have them yet, but one of the things we're planning on doing is we're going to have a lot of these type of transform set LUTs basically that you could do that. I don't think that it will be able to do it separately on the two outputs. It could do a clean and a LUT. I can't remember. It might only be able to do one. But the point is that you can set those color spaces on your monitors. So it's unnecessary to use the Bolt for that in most cases. The Bolt is, I think it's whatever. You let us know what you think about that.
Yep. Nicholas asked if we have a recommended probe for the monitors. I know, we calibrate each one individually before we send it out with a Klein. But as far as at home, Greg, what do you recommend?
I mean, nothing lower than a X-Rite. can never remember the model number of it. The one that everybody has, X-Ray.
Like X300?
I1
never mind.
Pro or something.
I Pro or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Or anything better, obviously. Nothing. Don't use the one that we used to make.
Next question, I think, is just a repeat. It said, how is the color management with OS 4? So we've kind of covered that. It's improved.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Wes asked, have you measured the 2020 gamut coverage on the Vision? I don't know if we have, Barrett.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in those stages right now, so we'll know soon.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, well, is the Vision louder? It's not going to be loud. It has a fan in it, but the fan it's basically at 40% speed, which is what's required to keep it cool. It's not audible. So I've heard that some other monitors, 4K monitors out there that are being shown, have a really loud fan. I've heard, I haven't actually heard it, so I don't want to claim that specifically which monitor it is, but ours is not going to be loud.
Yeah, we did a lot of testing and just showing different people around the office to see kind of what different people would perceive. And I couldn't hear the fan at 40 unless I was right up next to it in a relatively quiet room. So.
Yeah, same with me. I will say this, though, Andy's specific question, I think he was the same one asking, which one is better, Vision or OLED, and he's trying to decide between the two. The OLED, specifically for this question, the OLED will probably be slightly quieter than the Vision, because I imagine the Vision's fan will have to be slightly higher than the 40 that we have the OLED at.
Like if you had a microphone and you were analyzing how loud the fan was, and you had it inside the fan, it would technically be louder, but I don't think
on the Vision. Yeah.
I think we've covered that one.
Dave.
Wait, hold on. Dave Satin.
Yeah.
Everyone, Dave Satin is legendary video technician, and I appreciate that it should be called Big HD, but why not Big 4K, since these aren't even HD anymore?
Yeah, that is true.
Dave, do you want to try one? We have one in New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. OLED. We have an OLED in New York. Eric, it would also be very nice to publish your gamut coverage in CIE XY, in a CIE XY. We probably could do that, right, Greg?
Yeah, that would be nice to
do.
do.
We should do that. I mean, we kind of are planning on that, but we need to kick in the pants.
Yeah, I'm a little lost on this next one from Wes. He says, I'm referring to metameric failure. I don't know.
Let's look it up.
Yeah.
the Judd offset that he's talking about.
Oh, maybe. All right, Greg will look that up and we'll read his next question. The OLEDs often apply a Judd-Voss offset to correct perceived white visualization. So I wondered if you had seen this difference in perception.
I mean, the visually, the OLED is probably the most perfect display we've ever looked at in our shop. They say the Vision. I said the OLED. So I don't know. It looks better than everything else. Other than the Vision, which also looks really good. We can document all those things eventually, and you guys can get them and measure them and tear them apart. We're looking forward to that so we can make them even better.
Yeah. And Eric commented a few more times on what you and him were talking about, Greg. So I don't know if you wanted to look at his most recent.
Use LG is most used, but its config is a bit complex because of the external LUT box. I would love to see a competitor to Finders 55-inch for an in-room client display. We like the LG as it's a real-world reference, but as noted, a bit of work to config and keep covered. Yeah, that's kind of what we were getting at. So.
Yep. And Rich, can you change the fan setting?
Yeah. Can't remember exactly to what level of detail.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it has like a 0 to, I mean, it has like a 100%. It has 0 to 100 max. It
Yeah, and
runs,
don't we have like a like slow down while recording? I'm pretty sure we have that as well. If
That's
it
coming
catches
soon.
an SDI flag, okay.
That's coming soon.
yeah, but right now, I think the point is that it runs at a level that is not loud enough so that it can just run at that. It's set to run at the max audible level.
Right.
Okay, so there's a bunch of chatter in the chat. I don't know, Chris, if you've been keeping an eye on that, maybe you know, chime in if there's something else we need to be answering.
No, I looked through it. It's kind of
Okay.
responding to what we were talking about earlier.
That's what I figured. Okay, well.
Thanks for sitting through this, everyone. Please send us email if you want. I'll give you, you can reach me at greg@cs.inc. If you have any questions or if you want to get in touch with us about finding one of these monitors to look at in your neighborhood.
Yeah, and you know, we should probably set up a group email, Greg, too, for the future. Would be good. So people can just email products@SmallHD or products@cs.inc.
Actually, email Dave@cs.inc.
Dave.Bredbury. Otherwise, you'll get Dave Willis.
Oh yeah.
There's a bunch of questions floating in right now. Do you want to take a little more time? Let's do it. Let's do it. Does a Bolt 4K transmitter record flag?
Yes, sir. One of the greatest Bolt customers and Paralinx customers
Steven?
ever to live.
Thank you from Luke. Thank you, Luke, for all your great questions. Eric would happily test. Yeah, shoot us an email, Eric, and we can discuss it. And Andy, that was great. Thank you, fellas. Looking forward to checking them out in person in Cary when you get some Vision 24s to compare. And Nick, thank you, CS gang. Thanks, you guys.
Everybody. Appreciate it.
Your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, we're just going to go like this, and Chris is going to take care of
that.
Thanks, Solo. Thanks, Ali.